Hello, welcome back. The title of this lesson is called Order of Operations with Exponents. This is part 1. So what we're going to do is learn how to calculate complicated looking expressions that involve exponents using the order of operations. So first we're going to write them down, and ultimately we're not really going to have to look at our list too much, because as we solve problems you will start to remember what to do. I don't want you memorizing a list. But in the beginning we're going to use it as a starting point. So for the order of operations, the very first thing you do is you look for any parentheses in your expression. If you see any set of parentheses anywhere, you have to do what is inside first, inside the parentheses. That's the first thing you look for. Next, if you see any exponents, so I'll put exponents, right? You must do the exponents next. The next thing you look for, if you don't have any parentheses or exponents, is multiplication and division. So I'll put multiplication and division, right? And then finally, the very last priority after everything else is done, you do any addition and subtraction. Now, I'll say right in the beginning that a lot of you guys or a lot of people learn how to do the order of operations using a word called PEMDAS, right? I don't really like it. I don't really like that word too much. PEMDAS is parentheses, exponents, the M and the D is multiplication and division, and then the addition and subtraction is down here, addition and subtraction. So P-E-M-D, so PEMDAS, addition, subtraction. All right, the problem with PEMDAS is it tells you that multiplication will come before division, and it tells you that addition will come before subtraction, but that's not true. Notice the way I wrote it here, that multiplication and division are in the same priority level 3. They're at the same level. If you have multiplication only, multiplication and division happening in the same level, you do it left to right, reading it like a book. Multiplication does not come before addition. It's at the same level as, multiplication does not come before division. They're at the same level, right? Same thing here. Addition, subtraction, one doesn't come before the other. They're at the same level. So we're not going to use PEMDAS. We're going to use my little list, and it's going to become very, very simple, because ultimately you won't even use this list. You will start to remember what to do. All right, so here's our first little problem here. Let's say we have parentheses 3 times 4. And remember, we don't use x's for multiplication, even though I wrote it here. We don't use x's for multiplication. We use a dot. The reason we don't use x anymore is because now we're using x to mean a variable. And so we're not going to use x's anymore for multiplication. Then we have plus 3 minus 2 squared. So this looks very complicated, but it really isn't. We just have to follow our order of operations. Very first thing you do is check for any parentheses. Whatever's inside of the parentheses, you must do first. So you ignore all of this. You pretend it's not even there. You have to do what is inside here first. So what is inside here? 3 times 4. The only thing in there. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, multiplication comes down here after the exponent, and the exponent is over here. But you got to remember that when you are doing what is inside the parentheses, it must happen first. No matter what is in there, it has to happen first. So even though it looks like exponents come first, this is not inside of a parentheses. This parentheses, it basically overrides everything, and no matter what is in here, it must come first, even though multiplication is down a little bit lower. So 3 times 4 is 12. Once we compute what is in there, we can drop the parentheses. The rest of the problem just gets rewritten. Don't try to do too many things at once. Do this first, rewrite the rest. So now we have addition, subtraction, and we have an exponent. But according to our order of operations, we've done the parentheses. The exponent must come next. So the 12 plus 3, you just rewrite it. We're not doing it now. And the minus gets rewritten, but 2 squared. What does 2 squared actually mean? Right? 2 squared means what? 2 times 2, which is 4. So basically what you do is you replace the 2 squared with 4, because that is what 2 squared is equal to. And now you have addition and subtraction. Now addition does not necessarily come before subtraction. It's at the same priority level. So here when we have addition and subtractions mixed together, and that's all we have left, we just go left to right. So left to right, because this is at the same level as this. 12 plus 3 is 15, and then we have to write that minus 4 down, and then 15 minus 4 is 11. And so the answer to the whole thing is 11. All right, if in this step, instead of a plus, I had this as a minus, and I had this as a plus, we would do it left to right. We would do the minus first, and then we would do the plus. And it's a good example of why PEMDAS, if you learn it that way, is not great. Because when you learn PEMDAS, it's like this, P-E-M-D-A-S. A lot of people learn it like this. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. It kind of teaches you that multiplication always comes before division, but that's not true. In this step here, let's say that I were to change the problem a little bit. Here, what if it were 12 minus 3 plus 4? See, we just changed this to a minus and this to a plus. So PEMDAS would tell you that multiplication, or that addition comes before subtraction. But actually, since these are at the same priority level 4, and that's all you have left in your problem, you just read it like a book, left to right, calculating left to right. So we would subtract first, and then we would add. Because it isn't really addition coming before subtraction, these are really at the same level, and when that's all you have, you just read it left to right like a book. So that's why I'm telling you this. I'd like for you to learn kind of the way I write it down. Parentheses first, then exponents, then any multiplications and division left to right, then any additions and subtractions also, again, left to right. These are at the same level, and these are also at the same level. So with all the talking out of the way, we can crank through some more problems. 6 squared plus 9 times 2 minus 1. First thing we check for is any parentheses. After that, we check for any exponents. But we don't have any parentheses here, so we're done with that. But we do have exponents, and that comes next. 6 squared means what? 6 times 6. That's what 6 squared means. 6 times 6 is 36. The rest of the problem, don't try to do too much. Just rewrite it. You're going to have to use a little bit of paper here. Now in this line, I have addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And you can see from the order of operations, multiplication always is going to come first. So we have to do that first. So we ignore the addition and subtraction. In fact, we just rewrite it. 36 plus, and then the minus 1, it's just going to be rewritten. We do the multiplication first. 9 times 2, 18. Just drops in right there. Now we have addition and subtraction. Remember, addition and subtraction come last, and you do them left to right like reading a book. One does not really come before another. We just add. Now, what is 36 plus 18? Maybe you're not sure, so go over here, 36, 18, add. That's going to be 14. 3, 4, 5. You have 54. So this becomes 54 when we add these together. We then have to finally subtract the 1. We get 53. And that's the final answer. All right, after we do a few of these, everything is going to be very, very smooth because we're going to remember them without really having to look at a list. What about the problem 4 times 3 squared, close parentheses, divided by 12? Now, the first thing we check for is any parentheses. After that, we check for any exponent. So we see in here, we have parentheses, so we must do what is inside first. But you have to ask yourself, inside of here is a multiplication and also an exponent. Now, when you're doing what is inside of the parentheses, you still have to follow the order of operations inside, right? Now, in our first problem, we only had multiplication inside, so it was easy. But here, we actually, inside of here, we have multiplication and also an exponent. But you know from your list that exponents in general come before multiplication. So even though we have to do what's inside of here, we have to choose to do the exponent first because it comes first. So you just leave the multiplication alone. 3 squared. What does that mean? 3 times 3. That's what you should know now what exponents mean. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. So we just replace this with 9. Right? Now we read the whole thing again and we say, we still have a set of parentheses, right? But inside of there's now only one thing. 9 times 4 is 36. You can drop the parentheses once we've calculated everything inside. Still have to divide by 12. 36 divided by 12 is what? 3, because 3 times 12 is 36. So 3 is the final answer. Excellent. All right, let's move right along. We'll cram our next little one right over here. What is parentheses 2 plus 8? And then we'll close parentheses, multiply by 2 to the 3rd power plus 5. So the first thing we do, again, check for any parentheses and after that, any exponent. So obviously we have a set of parentheses here, and inside is addition. Now again, you might say, well, addition is like last priority, so why are we doing it first? It's only because it's inside the parentheses. It forces us to do it first, even though addition otherwise would be at the very bottom of the order of operations. But here we have to do it first. So 2 plus 8 is 10, and we can now drop the parentheses. We have now a 2 to the third plus 5. So now, among all of this, what do we do? After parentheses, we must always do exponents, right? And now we have a 2 to the power of 3. So you might want to go off to the side and remind yourself that 2 to the power of 3 is what? 2 times 2 times 2. That's what 2 to the 3 is. But what is this? You go left to right. 2 times 2 is 4, but then you have another times 2, so it's 8. So 2 to the power of 3 is actually 8, because 4 from here times 2 is 8. So what you're going to have, the 10 will be here, and the 2 to the third will be replaced by 8. And now we have this to look at and decide what to do. Right? So what do we have? We have multiplication and addition. And you know from your order of operations that multiplication and division always come before the addition and subtraction. So we multiply. 10 times 8 is 80. And then finally, the only thing left to do is addition. It comes last, of course, and we get 85. And we get an answer of 85, and that's the final answer. All right. So now we're at the halfway mark. I'd like you to really solve all of these. So we're going to do a bunch, but it will become second nature. 65 minus 2, parentheses, multiply, parentheses, 5 squared minus 13. Now from here on out, I'm going to try not to visit or revisit the listing of the order of operations too much. I do want you to remember it, right? And so we're going to look at it one more time, but after that, we're not going to go back and look at it any further, because after a while, I want you just to be able to remember it. First, check for any parentheses, do that first. Then check for any exponents, do that. Then any multiplication and division happens left to right, just like reading a book. And then the last priority is addition and subtraction, left to right, reading a book. It's 4 rules. I think we can remember it. I think we can handle it. All right? So let's go here. The first thing is we must do parentheses. And you see you have parentheses here. So we have to do what's inside. But what we have in here is exponents, and then we also have subtraction. We know that the exponent will come before any subtraction. So let's take 65. We're going to rewrite this. Open the parentheses, and the 5 squared. We have to do the exponents first. 5 times 5, that's what the exponent there means, which is 25. And then we're going to do that subtraction later because, of course, the exponent here comes before subtraction. Now, what is 25 minus 13? 25, 13. You get a 2 right here and a 1 right here. So inside of this parentheses, we must do this, which gives us a 12. We still have to multiply by the 2. We still have that 65 with the minus sign out front. All right, now we have to look at this and decide what to do. We have subtraction and multiplication. Remember, any multiplication, you have multiplication and division as the third priority, and then addition, subtraction as the fourth priority. So we have to do this multiplication first. 65, and then 2 times 12 is what? 24. Finally, we do the very last thing. What is 65 minus 24? 5 minus 4 is 1, and then this becomes a 4, and so the answer is 41. 41 is the final answer. All right, you see how it becomes mechanical after a while. Almost a little bit fun. I wouldn't say, you know, as fun as math can really be, but it becomes very mechanical because you know the rules. Once you know them in your mind, in your bones, then you don't have to think about what to do. Kind of like reading. You don't have to think about reading anymore. Right? So here we have in the parentheses 8 plus 17. Now think back to that list. The first priority is parentheses. We have parentheses. All we have is addition inside, so we have to do that first. So let's rewrite the rest of it. 4 plus the 6 squared. The minus sign is there. What is 8 plus 17? 8 plus 17 is what? 25. Right? So next we look at this. We have addition, subtraction, and an exponent. After parentheses, exponents come next. So 6 times 6, that's what 6 squared is. 6 times 6 is 36. All we did was compute the value of the 6 squared there. Now we have addition and subtraction. That's all we have left. There's no multiplication or division. That was priority 3. Priority 4, we do addition, subtraction, left to right. So 4 plus 36 is 40. We still have to subtract 25. And now we have 40 minus 25. And I think you can convince yourself that 40 minus 25 would be going down by 10, 30, and then 20, and then minus another 5 is going to be 15. If you're not sure about that, write it off to the side, do the borrowing, and you'll see when you subtract, the answer you get there is 15. All right, is 15. All right, I think we can squeeze the next one right next door here. Let's say we have, right here, 12 squared minus 84, and then we're going to divide by 5 there. Priority 1 is a parenthesis, so we have to do the parentheses. Now inside of here we have an exponent and a subtraction. Subtraction comes dead last. We have to do the exponent next. Now we know that 12 squared means 12 times 12. From our multiplication tables, we know that's 144. We still have the minus 84 right there, and we still have the divide by 5, right? So if you're not sure about this, you can go off to the side somewhere and subtract 144 minus 84, right? 4 minus 4 is 0. Make this 14. Make this a 0. 14 minus 8 is going to be what? 6. So you're going to have an answer of 60. So 60 right here is going to be what we get there. And the parentheses can then drop away. Then you divide by 5. Because after we calculate this, we still have to divide by 5. That comes last. 60 divided by 5 is 12. Because 12 times 5 is 60, and that's the final answer. All right, we're on the home stretch. Only 2 or 3 more problems left. All right, so let's finish strong. Let's see what we have here. Next problem. We have 4 to the power of 3 minus 58. And then we're squaring that. And then we add a 5 to it. All right, so we have to ask ourselves, what do we do first? Parentheses always first. So you ignore the square, you ignore the plus, you have to do what's inside. But what we have inside is a cube, which is an exponent, and then we have subtractions. We have to do the cube first. So what is 4 cubed anyway? It is 4 times 4 times 4. Now we know 4 times 4 is 16, and you're going to have to multiply by 4, right? So if you go do the multiplication on 16 times 4, you're going to get 64. So we get an answer of 64. So I encourage you to do that. 16 times 4, just do it off to the side, you'll get 64. So the 4 cubed, we replace with 64. Right? We still have the parentheses, we still have the square, we still have the plus 5. Now, it's going to be easier, instead of subtracting, just to count up from 58. 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. That's a difference of 6. So we have to do the subtraction here inside the parentheses. We get a 6. Now, after we've done this, we get an answer of 6. That has to be squared. And we look at what we have here. Between these two operations, exponents comes first. 6 squared means 6 times 6, which is 36. And finally, we add the 5, and we get 41, because 36 plus 5 is 41. All right, that's the final answer. All right, hang on with me. We only have 2 more, almost done. These are not too bad. What about 2 times 6 minus 9, all raised to the power of 3? So again, I have parentheses. I have to do what's inside, but inside my choices are multiplication or subtraction. Multiplication always comes first. 2 times 6 is 12, but that minus 9 is there, and I keep the parentheses because I've only done this inside. I still have that cube out there. I have to do what's inside the parentheses, same as always. 12 minus 9 is 3. I can now drop the parentheses after I've calculated what's inside, and I have 3 cubed. So what is 3 cubed? Just to write it out, it's 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Still have that last times 3. 9 times 3 is 27. So we get an answer of 27. That's the final answer. All right, only one more problem left and we are done. What about 8 multiplied by 5 minus 2? And then we plus or add to it 5 cubed. First thing we look for always is what? Parentheses. Have to do this. Inside, 5 minus 2 is 3. Still have to rewrite everything else from the problem statement. Right? All I did was calculate that, drop the parentheses. Now 5 cubed. What is 5 cubed? You can go off to the side. 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5. So the first 5 times 5 is 25. times 5. You know that 25 times 4 is 100, so 25 times 5 is 125. So this comes next, and we write it as 125. I still have to add over here and multiply exactly, rewrite everything exactly as it was. Now I have multiplication and addition. Multiplication comes first, so 8 times 3 is 24 plus 125. Now if it were 25 plus 125, it'd be 150. So this has to be 149. 149 is the final answer. So I hope that you have burned this in your mind by solving problems, because that's the goal. Sometimes in the beginning we have to use lists and things to help us remember, but really the way to remember, just like reading, you don't sound out the words anymore. You just look at it and you know because you practiced it so much. So we know from doing these problems that parentheses comes first. Then any exponents come first. Then multiplication and division are at the same priority level, left to right, like reading a book. Then addition and subtraction, again, are at the same priority level, left to right, like reading a book. So parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, same level, add, subtract, same level. I'd like you to solve every one of these. Order of operations is incredibly important for all future math. So solve all of these. Follow me on to part 2. I'm actually going to give you even more practice with slightly more complex problems in the next lesson.